Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Frumkin. It's time once again for the Best Cartoon Award Show, where we hand out fictitious awards to cartoon shows of years gone by. This time it's 1970. That's the year, not the decade. Okay? In 1970, first-run Saturday morning cartoons were all the rage. Syndication, which used to get first-run shows, were now just for reruns. Yet with the all but banning of superhero cartoons, all the shows were starting to look the same. Thanks mainly to the big hit from last season, Hanna-Barbera's Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Another big influencer was Filmation's The Archie Show, which started 2 years back. Its success made it very popular to add songs and musical numbers to shows. Even Scooby was doing it this season. But before I forget to mention it, here are the awards up for grabs. The best comedy, the best action, and the best all-around show. Plus, the dreaded worst new show. Now let's walk down memory or hearing it for the first time lane, starting with NBC's Saturday morning lineup, featuring 3 theatrical short shows. Terry Toon's Heckle and Jekyll cartoon show, which was in its 2nd season, Walter Lance's Woody Woodpecker show, which was the 3rd repackaging of shorts after a 6-year hiatus. Oddly enough, Walter was still cranking out cartoons for the movie theaters at this time as well, but the television show was only showing shorts from the 50s and the 60s. Also still in theatrical short production while being on TV was the Pink Panther show in its 2nd season. His show also included shorts of The Inspector, which had just wrapped up its theatrical run. As for reruns, NBC only had one show, Here Comes the Grump, which was about Princess Dawn and Terry Dexter trying to break the spell of gloom cast on her kingdom by the Grump, an evil wizard. Though it was basically a comedy show from Depatie-Freleng. They also had some live-action shows with H.R. Pufnstuf and the new Bugaloos, but who cares about those, right? We only care about the cartoons. Their first new cartoon show for 1970 was Tomfoolery from Rankin and Bass, and it is a sight to see. Just amazing and fun animation. Sadly, there was no plot or point to the show, really. It's all just kinda weird and random and only lasted 1 season. But still, you should check it out. Their second new show was Dr. Dolittle by Depatie-Freleng, which was somewhat based on the 1967 film starring Rex Harrison, even using a version of the popular theme song. Moving over to ABC, they had 2 new live-action shows, The Chimpanzee Show, Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp, and the BBC show Here Comes the Double Decker, which somehow aired on ABC 4 months before it aired on BBC One? Whatever. But to their cartoons, they had 3 shows in rerun. First, Filmation's The Hardy Boys, which featured the brothers as a musical duel as well as being detectives. Then there was the Mattel-sponsored shows, Skyhawks and Hot Wheels. One about cars, one about planes. While the cars had races, the planes did just about any odd job they could get. Talk about a waste of a cool name. Then ABC had a 2nd season of Motor Mouse and Autocat, the Tom and Jerry on Wheels show from Hanna-Barbera. It debuted last season on the Chattanooga Cat Show with its companion cartoon, It's the Wolf. Oddly enough, the Chattanooga Cats did not get a 2nd season themselves. For their 2 new shows, ABC first had the Rankin and Bass, The Reluctant Dragon and Mr. Toad show. 2 short cartoons from the adapted works of the famous British author Kenneth Grahame. One featuring a silly Gentile dragon, and the other one about a madcap tunnel-vision toad, both sporting the great and typical Rankin Bass designs by Paul Coker Jr. Their second cartoon was Filmation's Will the Real Jerry Lewis Please Sit Down?, which it's been reported that Jerry Lewis himself looked over the scripts, and even suggested that his chauffeur, David Lander, do the voice. Yeah, what now? David would go on to TV fame, though, on Laverne and Shirley as the greaser Squiggy. He's also done a lot of voice work since. As for the show, it featured mild-mannered Jerry getting into various troubles with other characters from the comedian's repertoire. You know, the Nutty Professor and characters like that. Lastly, we have CBS, which had the strongest lineup, with Scooby-Doo, Where Are You from Hanna-Barbera in its second season. The show was such a big hit, they even upgraded the opening sequence and added a musical chase scene to each episode. Then there was the Archie Show, which was in its second season of reruns, with the new title, Archie's Funhouse. Though as the year before, they added some short-clip jokes in the vein of the popular Laugh-In primetime show to keep the show fresh. For theatrical shorts, they had the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner show, basically in its 10th season, featuring the famous This Is It opening number. Then, after debuting last season on The Archie Show, Sabrina the Teenage Witch got her own show. With 16 new episodes, Sabrina was arguably the biggest hit. She would be in reruns for 3 more seasons before getting new episodes in 1977. Then ABC had 3 brand new shows. First, the companion show to Sabrina, Filmation's all-new The Groovy Ghoulies, featuring Frankenstein's monster, a Wolfman and Dracula, and a Laugh-In-inspired comedy variety show, filled with jokes, silly stories, and musical numbers. Next, there was the Archie spin-off made by Hanna-Barbera, Josie and the Pussycats, an all-female pop band getting into supervillain hijinks. The story goes that Filmation just didn't have the staff for 4 new shows, so Hanna-Barbera got it, and boy did they bring their A-game. I can watch this clip of Melody playing the drums all day. It's so cool. ABC's last new show was Hanna-Barbera's The Harlem Globetrotters, featuring the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters basketball team, with the iconic lineup of Curly Neal and Meadowlark Lemon, basically making it the first cartoon show with an all-black cast. Sadly, though, they didn't provide their own voices, but the super talented Scatman Crothers was a fine fill-in. The show itself was a typical Hanna-Barbera adventure show, as the team traveled around solving mysteries and other problems. But with the magic of the Globetrotters, it was a hit and ran for 2 seasons. Now, before we give out the awards, we'd like to mention a few other things about television animation in the year 1970. Like, did you know there was a new primetime cartoon in 1970? CBS's Where's the Huddles, a Hanna-Barbera summer replacement series, which was your typical suburban family sitcom, this time featuring a football player as the father. Unfortunately, the show was incredibly dull and was canceled only after 10 episodes. 1970 was also when CBS debuted Famous Classic Tales, the 1-hour program featuring rather poor animation adaptations of classic books and such. This premiere season, they had Tales of Washington Irving, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and A Christmas Carol, all animated by Hanna-Barbera's new Australian studio. But probably the most memorable animated production from 1970 was Rankin & Bass's stop-motion ABC special, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which has been broadcasted around Christmas time every year since. Okay, let's get to the awards, which I have to say was rather tricky this year, because all of them are just kind of decent for Saturday morning cartoon standards. But decisions must be made, so here we go. The best comedy show for 1970 is The Reluctant Dragon and Mr. Toad Show. While comedy back in those days was a stretch of the definition of comedy, Rankin Bass really went the extra mile here. Because along with the great designs and typical goofy setups, they had some truly good slapstick moments. So while the animation could have been smoother, it's a pretty funny show.
Not with the sledgehammer! The only way, old man. Besides, it'll feel so good when I stop.
The best action show for 1970, even though there really wasn't one, is Josie and the Pussycats. Since Hanna-Barbera was getting to play in the very popular Archie universe, they did everything they could to show up Filmation. And they kind of succeeded. While clearly cut from the Scooby-Doo cloth, Josie and the Pussycats also featured some of Hanna-Barbera's best animation and overall production work. And while Scooby-Doo faced pseudo-monsters each week, Josie and the Pussycats took on straight-up supervillains. I mean, look at these guys. And that's why they get the Best Action Show Award for 1970. Now, before we get to the best show, here's the worst show of 1970. Will the real Jerry Lewis please sit down? Sadly, this show is a perfect example of how bad Filmation's work could get. Typical cartoon plots, barely laughable jokes, painful music cues, and a pacing so slow it makes drying paint seem exciting. So while the model designs are good, and the intro is exciting and entertaining, the show is not.
I think it's awful.
Awful?
Certainly. Now we'll have twice as many payments to make on it, huh?
I hadn't thought of that.
And now the best new show for 1970, The Groovy Ghoulies. While Jerry Lewis showed the worst of Filmation, The Groovy Ghoulies showed the best. Great design work, good animation, decent gags, fast pacing, and fun musical numbers. The Groovy Ghoulies was a 30-minute party. Much like the popular primetime show, Laugh-In, which it was patterned after. In fact, Laugh-In writer Jack Mendelsohn is even credited with most of the show's writing. And while the show only lasted one season, it stayed in reruns for a long time.
No, we're Hansel and Gretel.
Hi! You're eating me out of house and home, but no matter. I love to see children eating well.
We'll eat the well as soon as we finish up the fireplace, you know?
Well, there you go, the best new cartoon shows of 1970. What'd you think of our picks? And be sure to let us know which one you think we short-shafted. And thanks for spending time with me as we took this trip into animation history. I gotta say, I was rediscovering the Reluctant Dragon and Mr. Toad show. Actually, I'm not even sure I knew it existed. But if you can be so kind to like, subscribe, and notify, I'll be sure not to bore you with something stupid. It's the end of the video. I always say something stupid at the end of the video. What are you gonna do?